Justice with Judge Mablean will be life, because in everything we do, it involves the law.
You came to court to testify about what you heard, what you saw, and what you know.
She's fair.
I don't have a hearing problem. This ear works good. This one works even better.
She's firm.
I'm not responsible for that ticket, and I'm not going to pay for it.
Who says you're not going to pay for it? I make that decision, not you.
She's honest.
What you have to say?
All I have to
Nothing.
say.
This is Justice with Judge Mablean. Ben Perez is suing Roger Coaster in the amount of $835. Mr. Perez claims Mr. Coaster excessively charged him for body transfer services after his father unexpectedly passed away. Mr. Coaster says he followed protocol and believes his fees are industry standard. Mr. Coaster claims he did offer the plaintiff a discount if he also used his funeral home for cremation.
In the matter of Ben Perez versus Roger Coaster, I have before me a case where you're suing Mr. Coaster, the funeral home director, for $835. You allege that he scammed you, basically, out of this money when you were making arrangements for your father out of town, and when he removed the body from the hospital to his mortuary.
Right.
So why do you think he scammed you?
Well, you know, it all started 6 months ago when my dad passed. You know, he was a general contractor. He specialized in roofing, and he would travel great distances. Usually, you know, wouldn't be uncommon for him to travel 3 to 5 hours just for, you know, one way, just for one job. And it's roofing, it's out in the hot sun. This day was a particular hot day, and on his way back home, he, you know, the cops say he just fell asleep and swerved and...
Fell asleep and...
No, he fell asleep and, I'm sorry, he fell asleep and he steered off the road. They said his truck flipped several times.
Ooh.
And he was unconscious. Me and my sister got the call.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. We dropped all of our plans and we rushed, you know, 3 hours away to this hospital. When we got there, for the most part, he was unresponsive. The only response that we got from him was when we would talk to him, he would squeeze our hand, and that's how we would know he could hear what we're saying. You know, me and my sister were both young. I'm a student. I'm struggling financially. My sister is a full-time mom. She's struggling financially. And the hospital bills and the, you know, funeral meetings were hard. He held on for the night, you know, just for me and my sister to get there. And he passed a few minutes after, you know, we said our final goodbyes. Within a few minutes of his death, the nurse comes rushing in, and I don't feel pity at all. She's just telling me she needs the body out of the hospital ASAP and just sign a release form, get the body out so they can make room for another person.
Tell me what the nurse said.
She told me we need to get the body out of here, and we need you to, you know, what are your plans? And we're 3 hours away from home. We don't know what we're doing. This is such an unexpected thing.
Unexpected, never had dealt with the death before.
Exactly. So we don't know what we're doing, and she recommends a funeral home for us. Both me and my sister, our brains were fried. You know, she's like, I recommend this one, so we're just like, sure, sign this form. And she even told us, you know, I can place a call on my own phone, so that way you can get a speedier response. And, you know, they're really great, and I highly recommend them. So we were just like, okay, sure. So she calls them up on her phone and hands the phone to me, and it's Mr. Coaster who answers. And, you know, I'm asking him, I need to know price. And he tells me, don't worry, we're going to discuss price when I make the trip out to the hospital. And so we're like, okay, great, you know. And we signed the release, and the release has nothing about price, and I have a copy of the release if you need it.
Let me see that. And the release is just for the removal of his remains?
Correct.
All right. Okay, go on. I can hear you.
Okay. So he tells us, he's going to be on his way soon. He doesn't give us an estimated time. And after we get off the phone with him, we realized we had to make all of these phone calls to relatives. We have to, my mom and dad got a messy divorce, and she moved out to Florida with her new husband. And we had to make that phone call, which was hard. We had to call my aunts, my cousins, etc. Just a mentally draining day, and we realized we need to eat. We haven't made time to eat. So we decided, there's a diner literally right across the street. So we go to the diner, and we're eating, and we're just making so many phone calls. And, we kind of just forget about the whole funeral home
You didn't
situation.
tell anyone where you were going?
That's correct. Our brains were fried, Your Honor. We weren't thinking clearly because we're under so much stress.
Coming up on Justice with Judge Mablean.
In the day in question, I did get a phone call from my niece.
Your niece?
Yes.
The nurse?
The nurse.
Justice with Judge Mablean. If you'll be in the Los Angeles area and want to bring your case to court, call 1-888-552-6878. You're watching Justice with Judge Mablean. We're back with the case of Ben Perez, who is suing Roger Coaster for professional malpractice.
And did you, let me see, you don't have a phone number on here either.
No, we don't.
When you signed this release?
But we made sure to give the nurse our personal cell phone number.
You gave that to the nurse who recommended Mr. Coaster?
Correct. And so we're eating our dinner, and then my sister, her kids are home with her husband, and so she has to go home, tend to her kids, and so I'm just staying at the cheapest motel I can find. I get back to my motel, and Mr. Coaster calls me, and he tells me...
How long had that been since
about
the phone call was made to him?
Since the initial phone call to him to when he calls me in my motel,
yes,
approximately 2 to 3 hours.
Okay, 2 to 3 hours has transpired. When did he say he would be at the hospital?
He did not specify a time.
Okay. Did he give you an estimate of any time at all?
He said, I will get there when I can.
Oh, okay.
And I made sure to give the nurse my phone number, and he told me, I picked up the body for you. It's at my funeral home. We're closing for the night, but if you want to swing by tomorrow morning, we'll be happy to discuss pricing with you. And still, at this time, I've still not gotten a price. Next morning comes, and I go over to him, and I notice he's charging me, $1,700 for the cremation and $5,000 for a funeral with a casket. And that's ridiculous. Me and my sister were both poor. We can't afford that.
Well, it may be ridiculous, but that's the going prices.
We found one for actually $950.
So at that point, you began to look around
Correct.
For someone else.
Closer to our town. So we found one for $950, and that includes transportation and cremation. And I have a...
Transportation from his mortuary?
Correct.
To the mortuary at your town?
Close to my town, correct.
And that was going to be
$950. And I have a copy of that invoice as well if you need that.
Okay. I'll look at it.
And I also have a copy of his invoice for transportation and refrigeration.
So the $835 is for transporting your dad's body from the hospital to his mortuary?
Correct.
All right. Talk to me, Mr. Coaster.
I've been in the mortuary business for 20 years. I've been owner and proprietor of Coaster Funeral Home for 10. I took it over from my uncle. In the day in question, I did get a phone call from my niece.
Your niece?
Yes.
The nurse?
The nurse. Yes. Janet called me and she said...
On her cell phone, not the hospital phone?
Correct. Correct. And I did talk to Mr. Perez and said I would be down there shortly.
You said shortly. He said
Shortly.
You didn't give him a time frame.
I didn't give him a time frame. I said I'm 15 minutes away and I will be there as soon as I can.
All right.
At that point, I arrived at the hospital.
What time?
30 minutes from the phone call.
You didn't go do anything else? You didn't make any stops?
Didn't make any stops, didn't get gas.
Well, I thought I read in the brief that you did.
No.
That you were doing something else at your mortuary and you had some other bodies you were tending to.
I did have another body, and I tended to that after I tended Mr. Perez.
Okay.
I also have associates that work with me, and at times I have to delegate. That was one of these times.
Did you say anything to him about the cost or what it entailed when you got there? what you would do?
I said we would discuss. I said we would discuss price, and I said we'll get your father over to the mortuary, and we'll be able to take care of things from there.
Okay, but you know there's a price to getting from the hospital to the mortuary.
Yes. Yes.
So if you discuss price after he gets to the mortuary,
no,
he's already incurred the price from the hospital to the mortuary.
Your Honor, I said we were going to discuss price when I got to the hospital. He could at any time, when I met him, said your price is too high, and at that point, I could have gave him references. I could have helped him out a little bit.
Okay, so you get to the hospital, and what happened?
Mr. Perez is not there.
Coming up.
I have to do what the hospital. This is a cold business.
It sure is a cold business and a calculated business.
Justice with Judge Mablean. You're watching Justice with Judge Mablean. We're back with the case of Ben Perez, who is suing Roger Coaster for professional malpractice.
So you have discussed prices?
We have not discussed prices.
He's not there.
But I have a signed release.
Okay, but do you have a phone number for him?
Yes.
Did you call him?
Yes.
And what happened?
There was no answer.
So now you remove the body without a firm agreement that I'm going to pay you this price.
The release is a firm agreement. It can either be signed or it can be verbal.
When the person signs this release for you to get the body, it could clearly add one more sentence. There is a fee involved. This is your release, Coastal Funeral Home. Prices vary from place to place. I know that. But you know your price for removal of a body from that hospital to your mortuary. Since you have these handy at the hospital in your niece's little hand, you could have one more sentence to say, and the price for removal from the hospital to my mortuary is X amount of dollars.
Your Honor, with all due respect, that's not true.
How come
they weren't in my hot little niece's hand?
Why couldn't you?
Why couldn't I?
Why couldn't you add one sentence?
That's a standard release form.
But your release forms is the way you fill it out and the way you prepare it. There is nothing standard about a release form. You can add any language you want.
That is a standard release form.
You can add any language you want. Your niece is at the hospital working on your behalf, being a little agent for you, and you know she's going to get these bodies and give it. Why couldn't you just say, and there's a cost? And the cost is, or why couldn't you wait until you reach the person?
My niece is not working on my behalf at the hospital. She's not, the timing, that would be almost impossible to do. I am on a short list with other mortuaries in the area. I have a solid reputation inside the community.
Mr. Coaster, I understand all of that. This is not my first time at the rodeo. I have buried a lot of people in my family, and I've been in charge of the burials of many others from family, friends, church, whatever. I understand. But as I say to all mortuaries, you know your prices, you know the game, you know the procedure, you know the cost. You do this every single day. You could have simply said to him on the phone when he was coming to get the body, it'll be $835. You know what the price is to remove that body. You didn't have to, quote, discuss it when you got there.
It is always best, I have found in my 20 years.
What's your price to go get a body from the hospital?
$835.
You got a standard price, right?
Not standard.
From that hospital.
From that hospital.
That's what I'm talking about. You got a standard price. Because the transportation and the distance doesn't change from the hospital to your mortuary, so you can't vary the price.
I understand all that, but I also know that I have to talk to people face to face when it comes to something like this.
If you got to talk to them face to face about your price, why you didn't have to talk to them face to face about releasing that body?
Because I had a signed release and
then
I had to act, and I had the hospital. Then you should have left the body there until you talked to the man face to face.
I had
the hospital.
Then you should have left the body there until you talked to the man face to face.
I'm not going to do that.
You had a number. Why not?
I'm not going to do that because it's
because some
I
other
have responsibility. When someone signs that release, I have responsibility to act. I have to do what the hospital. This is a cold business.
It sure is a cold business and a calculated business.
Coming up.
So you can keep thinking that it's a scam, but it's the way business is done.
How do I know she's not getting a cut?
She may. And what's wrong with that?
Closed captioning provided by. You're watching Justice with Judge Mablean. We're back with the case of Ben Perez, who is suing Roger Coaster for professional malpractice.
You paid $950, right?
Correct.
Okay.
For the local mortuary.
It's unreasonable, unfortunately, Mr. Perez. You need to learn to ask questions. How old are you?
I'm 24.
And you're in school?
Correct. To be an electrician.
College.
Correct.
Ask questions. What's wrong with that? Taking care of business.
My
What's wrong
father
with that?
had just died.
I understand that, Mr. Perez. Just because your father died, unfortunately, and you're dealing with these things in the heat of emotion, unfortunately, the law doesn't give you a leeway. The law doesn't give you a leeway. Now, if Mr. Coaster wants to give you a leeway, yes, but the law doesn't. It's unfortunate. That's why I advocate that funeral homes and mortuaries can simply indicate on their release what the price is for removal from the body. They don't want to do that because then people won't do it. Exactly. And once they get the body, you got to pay them.
Exactly.
Because they've already done the removal.
Exactly. And that's why and especially with his niece being involved with the hospital, I feel like it's just a giant scam.
It's not a scam. It's the way business is done, Mr. Perez. So you can keep thinking that it's a scam, but it's the way business is done.
How do I know she's not getting a cut?
She may. And what's wrong with that?
It's unethical.
Who says?
The morality.
Who said?
Morality says.
Is it against the law for the person in the hospital who recommends you a particular mortuary when you could say, well, what about another?
If she's willingly knowing, she's suggesting me to a scam artist.
He's not a scam artist.
It sure as hell feels like that.
Well, I know that's the way it feels. That's why I'm trying to educate you. He's doing what is done in the business.
Judge Mablean's verdict when Justice with Judge Mablean returns. Promotional consideration provided by. You're watching Justice with Judge Mablean.
But now in this instance, under the circumstances, I do believe that your niece acted in collusion. I do believe that your niece is a nurse there. She knows what the prices are, and she has to know. She's been 10 years. They've been picking up bodies from there. I do believe that you could have left that body there until you had a conversation with him and talked to him about the about the price to see if they could afford it. Because you wouldn't have removed it if he'd have said, I don't have $835. So you should have at least waited to make sure. So I do think that under the circumstances, you didn't act very professional. Now let's be reasonable here, and let's do something about it without me doing it. What you offer?
$200.
$200 off the $835?
Correct.
What'd you say?
No.
Let me see your price sheet.
It's the National Director of Funerals Association. You'll see everything that I have is right in the
This is for the national directors. You said yourself that everybody has a different sheet, has a different price list. So why are you giving me the national director?
What that is the standard median
Why are you giving me the
price.
national director? Where are
Because
yours?
I am showing you how my prices are right in line.
I didn't
with
ask you if they
the
were in line.
nationwide.
You have a price sheet. Coaster Funeral Home, been in business 20 years. Where is your price sheet?
I have a release authorization for me right here.
Pay the man $835.
Judge Mablean has ruled in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is ordered to pay $835.
In my business, emotions run high. I was only following protocol.
You're capitalizing on people's grief. You could have easily added the price in the release.
This has been a production of Entertainment Studios.